everyone, thanks for tuning in live. I am here with Brian Cuban. For those of you who don't know him, let me click over to his screen. He is an attorney in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He is also an author and in recovery, I guess is how I would phrase it.
Yeah, it's good. That's a good term.
Good term, okay. And he has a book that just came out on the 8th. Is that correct? It was the 8th of August?
Yes, its official release was the 8th.
Yes, and his book, if any of you haven't gone to his website, you can just go to briancuban.com and check out some of the excerpts from that because it's really, I'm really looking forward to reading through it, and some of the excerpts will give you just a taste of what he talks about and how honest and open he is about his process. So thank you so much, Brian, for being here with me. And I just have a couple questions to get us going.
Fire away.
And you feel free to go off and tell me whatever you'd like to tell me. These are just kind of simple guides.
Sure.
Get us going. So I guess just first of all, briefly tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what's going on with you right now.
Sure. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was born and raised there.
I thought I heard that accent.
Yeah, people say it's an Eastern accent, but if you're in Pittsburgh, East is New York.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's actually considered almost the beginning, although people in the Midwest hate when we say this. It's kind of considered the beginning of the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm 52 years old, born in Pittsburgh. I have two brothers, an older brother, Mark, a lot of people know. He owns the Dallas Mavericks and Shark Tank. Mm-hmm. And I have a younger brother, Jeff, who works for my older brother. He's a media executive.
Okay.
And we all live here in Dallas, Texas. Believe it or not, we all migrated to Dallas, as my father does too. So kind of.
Okay. So everybody's cool. There.
Everybody there. My mom's still in Pittsburgh, but we all live. Actually, we all live within a mile of each other.
Oh wow.
So yeah, it's kind of it just shows you how close we are.
Yeah, that's nice.
So my life isn't a lot different than a lot of lives. I just responded to it that differently than a lot of people do. Unfortunately, I grew up and I had a difficult relationship with my mother. There was a lot of fat shaming. There was no such term back in late 1960s and 1970s. Now we call it fat shaming. And she was fat shamed by her mother. So it runs downhill. Runs downhill, and she had a difficult relationship with her mother. And then there was a difficult relationship with me. I was a very shy child. I was not like my older brother's very outgoing. He was out of the house doing his thing. My younger brother was the jock doing his thing, and I was just a very shy and reserved child. Just wanted acceptance, wanted friends, and that's just how I was genetically programmed.
Yeah.
And so when my mother would use these words with me, you're going to be fat if you do this. I love to eat Chef Boyardee beefaroni. Is Chef Boyardee still around?
Yes,
Chef Boyardee still around? So I believe
I saw it at the store the other day.
I love to eat Chef Boyardee beefaroni, and I love to eat out of the can, and I love to eat a lot of it. Mm-hmm. And my mom would say, "You're going to eat that. You're going to be a fat pig." She'd say things like that. Oh, yeah. Tough words for a 9, 10-year-old child.
Yeah, things you shouldn't have to think about.
Yeah, and so depression kind of set in, and I was predisposed to have depression. I mean, for that to take a much more extreme effect on me than it might affect some other people.
And to say predisposed, does that mean, are you saying it runs in your family? Or?
No, I believe there are genetic predispositions to personalities.
And there are studies that show that is very true. So
I was genetically predisposed for this stuff to affect me harshly.
Okay.
Where some other people might just slough it off.
Yeah.
And so I was the one home all the time because I was very shy and had few friends. So I took the brunt of it. Mm-hmm. So I got depressed. I started eating more. I started to gain weight, and I became from a normal Brian to a heavy Brian, a fat Brian. Mm-hmm. And by the time I was probably about 11, 1970, 61, 72, I was born in 61. So by the time I was 10, I had ballooned to about 260, close to 270 pounds, which is, a lot for a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and I wasn't being, it wasn't like muscle. I wasn't being recruited for college recruited. I was a fat kid.
Yeah.
And then the bullying started. There was bullying by the other students over my weight. I was even fat shamed by my gym coaches. And I was fat shamed by other adults. One example that comes to my mind that I've never forgotten, I played Little League Baseball. And I was actually a pretty good Little League Baseball player because I had the weight behind me. I was a good home run hitter. I was picked for the teams because I could hit, because I could hit the ball.
Yeah.
One day, we were having practice, and I guess I wasn't running fast enough to first base. The coach says to me, "Hey, Cuban, pretend you're chasing a refrigerator to first." I
You're
was
kidding me.
devastated. So I was, so I had it coming from different angles,
Yeah, from everybody that
from
was
everybody.
potentially someone to look up to, I guess.
That's right. That's right. So, memories. You think back, and there's a saying, your memories are just memories of your memories. There's
Yeah,
no way you can have the truly accurate picture of what happened that many years ago.
yeah.
But this is what I remember.
And that's, to be honest, that's all that's important for our experience. And even if you did remember it exactly, does that change how you felt? No.
No,
You know.
no, because those
So
feelings stayed with me for the next 40 years.
exactly. And you remember it vividly today, the way
That's
that,
right.
you know.
And the bullying kind of came to a culmination in high school or in junior high school when I was really wanted to be accepted. So I sort of hung around the fringes of the accepted group, sort of just like,
Hmm.
hoping they include me in things, but
Yeah.
not really being included in the trips to the McDonald's and the Dairy Queen hangouts and whatever, but just hoping, always hoping I would
Yeah.
be included, the fat kid on the outside. And I'm walking home with these kids, and I had on these gold, silky, shiny satin pants that my brother Mark had given me. Now, this was pre-disco, but the closest thing I can compare them to is disco pants. And this
It
is
reminds me MC Hammer pants or something.
see,
But
that's
I'm
not
a
even my
child of
generation.
yeah.
Yeah, you're a child of MC Hammer. I'm a child of Saturday Night Fever. Okay, so two different generations. But in any event, they were very tight on me. Okay, and my stomach hung over. So, but I loved him. My brother had given them to me. I loved my brother. I idolized my brother,
Hmm.
and I loved the gold shiny pants he had given me. So I
Hmm.
wore them. I wore them
Yeah.
all the time. I didn't care. And so I'm walking home with these kids, maybe a group of five. I'm trying to think, yeah, 5 kids, and they start making fun of them, and I'm used to it. You get a very self-deprecating sense of humor. Yeah, Brian.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm fat. Yeah, I have man boobs. Yeah, that's so funny. And
Yeah.
because you want to be accepted, and
Yeah.
it's a problem I still have today. That self-deprecating sense of humor, because it becomes a self-defense mechanism.
Yeah.
So, but then they start pulling at them. They start pulling at the pants. Then they start tearing them off me. Then they tore them off completely, this group of kids, and threw them in the street, left me in my underwear.
You're kidding me. On the way
Left me
home
my
from
fat,
school.
a mile from home. My gut hanging out over my under tighty whities, and I had to go out in the street, at this busy street, and pull up my clothes, picked up my torn pants, and hide them over my underwear as I walked home. No one stopped to help. No one stopped. People gawked.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was very traumatic. People might call it pants, but in reality, it was a physical assault. If
Yeah.
that happened today, those kids would be in jail because that would be up on YouTube. It would have gone viral. I would have been a million times more humiliated because it would have gone viral. But those kids would also be in jail. It was a physical assault.
Yeah.
Back then, in 1971, going viral meant spreading through the lunchroom.
Yeah.
So it went through the lunchroom. Kids made fun of me. But that incident, combined with with what was going on at home, had a profound effect on my self-image.
Yeah.
It was at that point I remember starting to think differently about myself.
And that was one of my first questions was when did you first notice being uncomfortable in your body?
In junior high school.
Yeah.
Junior high school.
And I think for a lot of my viewers, they are in junior high, in high school right now. And I even remember at that age being very aware, whether it was bad or good, you're very aware because it's a time of change for
It is a time
every.
of change, and I was changing from a body image standpoint, from my standpoint, for the worse, because I kept
Yeah.
eating and I was getting very depressed. And so I had friends, but they were all sort of the friends that are always on the outside, the
Yeah.
fringe guys. And I like. Have you ever seen Animal House?
Yes.
The movie?
Many
I
times.
like. I like to compare it from the scene in Animal House where the frat party, where they put the two loser guys with Jugdish and the guy in the wheelchair and the
Yeah.
blind guy on the couch.
Yeah.
That was always me, hanging out against hanging out on the couch with all the rejects, wanting to
Yeah.
be with all the popular kids. And so and that's who I compared myself every day. Those popular kids who I saw who seemed to be good looking, were getting the girls, were going to McDonald's, were going to the football games.
Yeah.
Because there was no internet back then. There was no explosion of media images.
Yeah.
So people talk about how the media and the internet affects things today. That had no effect on me. I was comparing myself to the kids I saw every day.
Yeah, the actual people in your life.
That's right. So when people say, did the media affect you, your sense of self? No. No.
Yeah.
Because this was all cemented in me from real brick and mortar interactions.
Yeah, and when did you begin? I know that you kind of talk about binge eating, and
Yes.
that's kind of your first coping skill. When did it flipped over on itself and it became anorexia? Do you remember?
It flipped over. It was bad. It's the other way around. It flipped over from anorexia to binge eating.
Oh, okay.
It started my freshman year in college.
Mhm.
And I remember the thought process vividly. It was the first day people were moving in, and
Mhm.
I had already started over the summer to food restrict severely,
Okay.
because I decided over the summer before school that I could take control of my body that way
Uh-huh.
and be accepted. But it hadn't gone. I was more on the line of I'm dieting. It wasn't more. It hadn't gone full restriction, food restriction.
Gotcha.
So I'm standing in my dorm room that overlooks the parking lot, and there are a couple pretty girls out there. I remember she had this curly red hair talking to a blonde friend, and I
Mhm.
have our dorm room. I lived in a dorm suite. It had this big picture window, and I'm looking out in the parking lot, people coming in and out, moving their boxes, and I make eye contact with her. The window's open, the breeze is in. I'm feeling a new start. And I look out there and I make eye contact with her. I smile. She looks at me. She looks at her friend, and she starts laughing. This laugh that made me sick because I knew what was coming next. She goes, "He's ugly.
Oh,
Boy, is he ugly!" And it sounded like a boom from God. And I cried myself to sleep. It was devastating. I wanted to go home. I cried. All of a sudden, I was that 13 or that 11-year-old kid pantsed again.
Yeah, right back there.
I had been pantsed all over again in front of everyone in that parking lot.
Yeah.
And so it was right there, I decided that, you know what, I have to do something about this. I'm going to starve myself. I'm going to take it to the next level. I was just trying to eat better. I had started walking. Now I'm going to starve myself. And that next day, just like flipping a switch, I was eating less than 500 calories a day for close to a year.
You're kidding me.
And and not understanding what that was, to me it was the natural thing to do. This was before Karen Carpenter. You have to realize this was before a national conversation started.
Before anybody talked about it.
There's no one to talk. There's no eating disorder programs. There's no one talking about it. Parents aren't talking about it. Guys certainly aren't talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, gender rules still haven't caught up with male stigma for eating disorders. Back then, forget it.
I completely agree. Yeah.
Back then, forget it. So if a guy with these issues is not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
So I would basically limited myself to many cans of Tab and M&Ms out of the machine and one salad. That's it. Every day for close to a year. And I kept getting thinner and thinner and thinner. I was weighing myself obsessive compulsively at the campus infirmary 3 times a day.
Oh, wow.
3 times a day. They even told me, hey, this isn't right. But they didn't understand it either.
Yeah.
Back then, they didn't understand it either.
There wasn't any knowledge out there. I mean, if we think there's not much knowledge now, I mean, looking back then, there was...
Nowadays, someone's coming, especially, a female, I don't know what they think if a guy did it. Nowadays, a female's going into the campus infirmary 3 times a day and weighing herself. It's going to trigger some bells with some people who understand eating disorders.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Back then, forget it. Or it should trigger some bells, let me say.
Yeah.
It should trigger some red flags. But back then, forget it. So I went into the starvation mode, and it seemed completely normal. But body dysmorphic disorder had also set in. And let me explain body dysmorphic disorder.
Yeah, a lot of my viewers suffer from that, and they've been asking me to do a video on that topic because people use it incorrectly.
Yes, body dysmorphic disorder, but for me, has been when your brain stops processing the visual signals that you see of yourself normally. So you start looking in the mirror, and what may have been once a fat stomach, you still see the fat stomach, even if there's no defect there.
Yeah.
You still see this huge fat stomach, this ugly monster, even though you keep losing weight.
Yeah.
Okay, so even when I got down to 168 or 70 pounds, up from a high of 260, from just from anorexic behavior, But I kept seeing this huge stomach. That I just kept focusing on this huge stomach, which happens in body dysmorphic disorder.
Yeah.
My eyes, every time I looked in the mirror, would be laser focused on my stomach, and thinking it's not right. I'm still fat. I have to starve myself more. And then, as people with body dysmorphic disorder know, it becomes obsessive compulsive. Starve, starve, starve. Restrict, restrict, restrict. Just an obsessive compulsive routine designed to change that image in the mirror that never changes.
Yeah, and the interesting thing that a lot of people don't understand about body dysmorphic disorder is that usually most people have one or two focuses. That's it.
That's right. And for me,
it's not the whole thing.
Absolutely. For me, it was my stomach, and my stomach and my sides, and to some extent my loss of hair. Look at me, I'm wearing a cap. That's that's body dysmorphic habit.
Yeah, but it makes you more comfortable. So if there's
it does make me more here. There.
Yeah. There we go.
Wearing my cap makes me more comfortable.
Yeah.
Because my eyes see something different, on my hair because of the body dysmorphic disorder. Yeah. But getting back to college. No matter how much I starved myself because of the body dysmorphic disorder, which let's distinguish. I'm not a treatment provider, so I'll just give my distinction.
That's fine.
It's not anorexia. It's not a diagnosis of, say, anorexia per se, because it's not about the food.
Yep.
Okay. Exactly. It's about the mirror.
Yep. And
it's about the mirror.
People don't always make that distinction, and that's
either
very,
do treatment providers. Treatment providers don't always make that distinction. And
I've learned that too.
Yes, and they don't diagnose it correctly.
No.
They treat the anorexia. They don't treat the body dysmorphic disorder.
They think it's all the same, and it's very different.
It's very different. So it's about the body dysmorphic disorder. It's about the mirror.
Yes.
And so that's why it's called the broken mirror syndrome.
Yep. Exactly.
So after all the starving, I kept seeing the same thing in the mirror, and you know what? I'm like, I got to eat something. I got to eat something because it's not about the food. It was getting difficult on me. That's not working. I got to try something. So I remember it. I can't give you the date, but I remember what happened. I'm like, okay, screw this. I go down to the local buffet and I just start pigging out. I just ate till I was just ill and depressed, because then all of a sudden I'm stuffed and I'm depressed because now I'm back to that 13-year-old fat boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like
now
immediately.
Once again, I am that 13-year-old fat kid. I couldn't stand it. It was like this pressure in my head. I got back home, turned on the shower faucets, turned on the faucets, blah! And I hope that doesn't trigger anyone watching this.
You're just telling your story. That's what you're here for.
Yeah, I don't want to be triggering here, but this is my story.
Yeah.
So I get back, and it was like the feeling from purging was like nothing I had ever felt. That feeling of empowerment and relief and physical relief of knowing that I could eat, control my body, and do something else. And it was just so, I almost compare it to, I'm also a recovering cocaine addict. I almost compare it to a cocaine high. Just the act of purging. But then again, once you do that, you feel that great moment, then the depression sets in again. What did I just do? The guilt.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's interesting how we replace one thing for another thing. So it's like we're doing this to keep things in check, and then that's too much. Okay, well then I'm gonna try this thing. But then
that's right.
From there, is that when you found yourself going into kind of drugs and alcohol?
No, absolutely no. This was that. Then then the bulimia stayed with me until 2007. I stayed bulimic for 27 years.
Wow.
Not always with the same intensity as it was back then, but I stayed bulimic for 27 years. But so I stayed. I transitioned into bulimia, and then I transitioned into running and exercise anorexia. I was running 100 miles a week.
Wow.
So as I moved into my sophomore and junior year in college, between being bulimic, I would go out and I'd run. And this is in my book. I did some crazy running stuff.
Yeah.
I would go out and I'd run 15 miles, 20 miles. I'd come back. I'd binge on 2 large pizzas and a 2-pound bag of peanut M&Ms. I cannot eat peanut M&Ms to this day. And then I'd purge. And I started through this exercise, anorexia, and bulimic cycle that took me through college, and to some extent into law school.
Yeah, that's what I wondered if it could, because
Yes.
usually when school's a stressor, and law school's very stressful.
Well, school wasn't a stressor. The mirror was a stressor.
Oh, okay.
The mirror, I kept seeing that damn image in the mirror, that fat 13-year-old kid, no matter what I do. School was an escape for me, a way to isolate.
Yeah.
But the mirror, the loneliness of the mirror is what drove me. The loneliness of my reflection, the horror of my body dysmorphic reflection is what drove this behavior. For me personally. For others, I know recovering bulimics and recovering anorexics, that it was stress.
Yeah, well, everybody's different. Yeah.
Everybody's different. But again, it's important we separate the two diagnoses.
BDD versus any eating disorder.
That's right. Eating disorder may be attendant to BDD, but in fact, only 30% of BDD sufferers also have an eating disorder.
Oh, really? I didn't know the stats on that, but very interesting.
And that is from Dr. Catherine Phillips, who wrote The Broken Mirror.
Yep.
So then you also have all the other addictions. I didn't cycle into drug addiction until I finished law school and moved to Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
I was still bulimic. I wasn't running as much. And one day, someone asked me if I wanted to try cocaine, and I did, and it gave me that feeling that I'm a normal person for a few minutes. Mm-hmm. This great, I'm desirable, I'm attractive. That mirror reflection looks just fine. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I remember standing in the bathroom. I had just tried the cocaine for the first time, and I'm sorry if this is very specific, but this is my life. This is what it is. So I had just done it, and I remember looking in the mirror of that bathroom and saying, hey, that's a good-looking damn guy. That's a damn good-looking guy. Uh-huh. So I go running upstairs before the cocaine wears off into the bar, and I'm like, yeah, I'm good-looking. Forget body dysmorphic disorder. Yeah. So what happens? So it becomes, not only addiction, but obsessive-compulsive. Have to have it, have to have it, have to have it. Have to have that moment in the mirror. So everything became about cocaine and alcohol for that moment in the mirror where I look good, I'm attractive, I can talk to women, I don't feel fat.
Yeah.
I'm no longer that 13-year-old boy or that 11-year-old boy that was bullied, and fat shamed. And so, and it really, if my body dysmorphic disorder can really be encapsulated into anything, it was always trying to not be that bullied little boy.
Yeah, and it sounds like
little boy.
That's a lot of times with my clients, I'll talk about like a breaking point, and it can be different things for everybody. It can be abuse, it could be an event like that, like being teased or mocked or anything, but everybody has that breaking point and that thing that we hold on to that comes up every time we try a new coping skill.
That's right.
And it kind of it's like the driving force behind our illness.
That's right. And it was a very important realization for me later, because until I went back and dealt with that 13-year-old boy, there was no way to move through my BDD into recovery.
Exactly. And that was kind of my next question, is guiding us, because I know in your book you talked about kind of the breaking point and being in that psychiatrist's office and still kind of being high and drunk and just angry and sad at the same time.
Well, let me cycle ahead. So I continued through all these behaviors, failed marriages because of the BDD. I was incapable of being intimate on any level because you're ashamed of your body.
Yeah, how are you supposed to?
Yeah, you're ashamed of your body. You think they're ashamed of your body. The false thoughts.
Yeah.
And so you're not intimate. You don't open yourself up to a relationship, and they fail. That's and that happened to me over and over again. So finally, through the drug abuse, through the failed relationships, I lost all hope. I lost all hope for a future. I lost all hope of ever seeing a normal Brian in the mirror, just being happy. I stuck a .45 automatic in my mouth and slide action, and I just for days I would pull that slide action and fire that gun in my mouth, trying to just get good with ending my life. Just making myself comfortable with the action. And I finally reached that point where I said, I'm ready. I emailed a friend of mine for bullets. He's the one who gave me the gun. And I said, hey, I just want to go shooting, whatever, bring me some bullets. I was too messed up to go, or I would go get them myself, but I was too high and drunk. I didn't want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
And I was too depressed. So I said I wanted him to bring me the bullets. He was smart enough to say something's not right here, and he emailed and phoned my two brothers, who showed up at my door, pulled that .45 automatic off my nightstand and dragged me down to a psychiatric facility. And so I met with the doctor. I met with the psychiatric doctor, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I'm
All
gonna,
the intake information.
Yeah,
whatever.
blah blah blah. So we they didn't. I as a lawyer, I knew they couldn't put a Britney Spears on me if I didn't answer certain questions the same way. Right?
Yeah.
I was very combative. They were.
I got that feeling from your book. That's what I loved about the little excerpts. Is I could picture you. I could picture how you were. I've dealt with clients like that, not wanting help.
I wasn't ready. I absolutely was not ready. I was not ready for recovery. My life was being controlled. I wasn't standing for any of it. So I answered the questions so they couldn't put a hold on me.
Uh-huh.
And they take me back home, and we did agree where, you'll stay home, you'll sober up, we'll take your car keys, all that stuff.
Yeah.
A month and a half later, I was back out at it.
Yeah.
There was that image again. None of that got rid of that image.
Yeah, it wasn't helping the core problem.
It wasn't helping the core problem.
It's the symptoms, kind of. Yeah.
It was just getting rid of the symptoms for a while. So cycling further ahead, I hit another low point. I had a 2-day drug, Ambien and alcohol-induced blackout, which I did a lot of terrible things during that blackout. I was unfaithful to my girlfriend, and I was just a terrible person. And back to the psychiatric facility with her.
Okay.
Running home to mama, back to the psychiatric facility. This was April 8th. This was April 8th, 2007.
Okay.
So we're waiting for the intake, standing in the parking lot of that psychiatric facility, and my girlfriend's crying. I'm thinking that's over. We had been dating for about a year. She had just moved in with me. We've been dating, and that was my gift to her. So she's crying, and I'm thinking she's done it. And we're waiting. Because for whatever reason there was a long wait for intake, and I'm in the parking lot, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I don't have any more looks into the abyss. One more time, if I'm back here one more time, I either won't be back here because I'll be dead. Or I will have lost my family. I will have lost my brothers who I love dearly. I've lost my mom and my father. Not because they won't stop loving me, but because love is unconditional, but the willingness to see someone you love destroy themselves is not.
Yeah.
Okay? So they'll start distancing. They have families. They don't want some drug-addled, person around their kids high all the time. And that thought of losing my family that I love so much and that I know love me just was really just devastating to me. And it was that was my moment of clarity, the cliched moment of clarity that we talk about, where I said, that's it. I can't do this anymore. I have to figure out how to see something normal when I looked in the mirror. I have to figure this out because it is causing me to reach the point where I am not only destroying my life, but I'm destroying everyone else's life. And that I couldn't live with. The next day, April 9th, I walked into my shrink's office, who I'd been seeing for 10 years, starting with marriage issues, lying. And I said, doctor, it's time to get honest. I tried to kill myself. You didn't know about that, a year or so ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm back at a psychiatric facility the other day. I've been coming into your sessions coked up because to feel better about coming in here.
Yeah.
I've been telling you everything's okay, and I think I'm suicidal. I think I'm back on the path to being suicidal. I don't want to go back there. I need to start healing, and the first start is to just risk the judgment of my false thoughts, saying my own shrink's going to judge me.
Yeah. Which I hear a lot from my followers. They'll say, I'm so worried to get help because they're going to judge me, and I already judged me enough. I don't want them. Yeah.
I had to fight through that. I had to fight through that in that room, and basically just surrender myself. And I don't mean surrender myself to a 12-step higher power or God, whatever.
No,
okay, because I'm not a religion. I'm not a spiritual person. Surrender myself to my treatment provider.
Yeah.
To the trust.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. And he didn't judge me.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't judge me. He said, "Let me help you."
And I always try to tell people, whenever they think they have the worst case or the worst story, we've heard worse, and we've heard it all.
Well,
and
but
it's not about the judgment. It's about helping It's about listening.
It's not about judgment, and that's no comfort to someone sitting there thinking they're going to be judged.
Yeah.
I think no matter how bad it is, you're still going to judge them. No matter how much stuff you've heard that's worse, you're still going to judge them. That's part of body dysmorphic disorder. That's part of a lot of different things. The false thoughts tell you everyone is going to judge you and call you fat. My thoughts literally told me that if I opened up to my shrink, he was going to say, well, you're just a fat, ugly kid. Why? You deserve all that. That's what my thoughts told me. And here's a guy I'm paying not to judge me.
It's true, and people don't realize how pervasive the thoughts are.
So once I opened up, it felt it felt like the weight of the world. I bawled for an hour in his office. I'll start crying now. Think about it. I bawled for an hour in his office just from the relief of finally letting that huge burden of my shame, of the shame I had of my body, of the disappointment of myself that dated back 40 years.
Yeah.
The release of all that was like the weight of the world lifted off my shoulders, and that was the first step. That the small first step towards recovery. Getting honest. Getting honest. You have to get honest about where you've been. You have to get honest about who you are. And where
agree.
you are.
Yeah. I agree. And it's hard. I mean, you're really brave. That's the thing.
It is hard. Well, it took me, it took me 51 years. Or actually that was back, it took me 44 years. You went in 2007. It took me a long time to do that. I suffered, it is difficult. It's easier to live a lie than have to get honest about the truth.
Yeah.
But so that was the first step. So we talked, so the next step is what can we do? What's the next step after this? You finally told me what's up. We can talk. Well, I'm a cocaine addict. I'm an alcoholic. We have to get that under control because we can't get to the root of your problem till we get the behaviors under control.
Exactly. I do that, all the time. I send people, I'm like, we're going to have to get you into treatment first because you're not going to be able to be present with me if you're high.
Exactly. So we have to get the behaviors that can kill you right now under control. So we talked about rehab, and I was, and I was very resistant to rehab. I was still not completely, open myself up. Because of my ego. I was resistant to rehab because of what people would think. I had not let loose completely. So he goes, why don't we try 12-step? I said, okay, both those Skid Row, Sterno bums, yeah, great, And, I kind of knew, I had been looking at, I kind of knew subconsciously I was an alcoholic for a long time. But I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this, and I wanted my family's approval of this. I wanted to show, because I love my family so much, I wanted to show them that I was taking the right steps. Yeah. And if that's the motivation, that's fine early on. Whatever motivates you to take that step forward. That was
100% agree. That's whatever it takes for you to get motivated. I don't even care what it is. Just do it. Whoever it is.
And it's kind of funny. I won't get into too many specifics because people go a little crazy if you get too specific about 12-step and call it the other thing. But I walked up to this door, and this is in my book, where it's the recovery group, and I'm looking down the hallway, and I'm looking. There are people in there, and I don't want to be seen, and I'm so embarrassed to be seen. And I open the door a little bit. It smells like stale smoke, and I'm like, no. I run back to my car. I'm sitting in my car. The engine's going. I'm like, if I pull out of here, there's no telling where this car will stop.
Yeah.
There's no telling where my life will spiral back to. So I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about my girlfriend who had moved out and moved into a hotel, and I'm thinking I've lost her, blah, blah, blah. Thinking about my family. And and my thought was, I'll disappoint myself, but I can't disappoint them here. So I sucked it up. I turned off that engine, and I went in that room. And I never looked back. I never looked back from an addiction standpoint. I never looked back from an eating disorder standpoint. I never looked back from a drug or alcohol standpoint. All behavior stopped that day.
You're kidding me.
No. That didn't mean the thoughts did not stop. Okay?
Of course. And
The
that's kind
thoughts,
of one of my next questions was, what do you do with those thoughts now? How do you
there
fight
was
them?
a there was a lot of treatment after that. There was a lot of intensive psychotherapy. There was a
Mhm.
lot of cognitive behavior therapy, replacing those
Uh-huh.
thoughts with positive thoughts. That's not to say, I mean, 12 step, 12 step gave me 12 steps saved my life, but it saved my life because it gave me structure
Hmm.
to where I could think clearly. I don't advocate 12 step to anyone. I think everyone has to make their own decisions.
Yeah, I agree.
With their treatment provider, talk to your treatment provider or get a treatment provider and talk to them about what's right for you. Some people, excoriate 12 steps. Some people love it.
Yep.
Everyone has to make their own decisions. But for me, I can say the structure it gave me to get sober, get a clear head, and to finally get present in therapy,
Hmm.
that saved my life.
Yeah.
So,
And are
so
you still in therapy or?
oh,
Um,
absolutely,
okay.
absolutely, every week. Every week, I'm
Okay.
in therapy and I'm on 20 milligrams of Lexapro a week. The antidepressants
Uh-huh.
saved my life as well. When they also the SSR, what are they? SSR1, what are they called?
SSRIs or?
SSRIs also help with
Hmm.
obsessive compulsive disorder,
Yeah, they
which,
do.
which, which is part of body dysmorphic disorder.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
that helps me with all the little tics.
Uh-huh.
So the therapy was ongoing after that. It was very intensive. It was restructuring my thoughts, forcing myself to look in the mirror, forcing myself to tell myself that's silly, testing my thoughts, going out and taking risks, taking
Hmm.
first small risks, then big risks. I did some there in my book. I took some huge risks. I danced in a local Dancing with the Stars contest in front of 1,000 people.
I saw that. I
I
thought that
mean,
was really cool.
and some people made, that was a huge risk for me, and I took it,
Yeah.
and I was, and people didn't laugh at me. People laughed with me, and people applauded for me, and I
Yeah.
sucked, and I sucked.
Oh,
But you have to test your thoughts that people aren't thinking these things about you, and they're not.
yeah. And
You
it's
know,
it's something we call in the therapy world we call reality testing,
there
because
was a lot of reality testing.
in order to challenge the thoughts,
That's
we
right.
have to check in.
I
And
did a
and
lot.
people will surprise you that they're not thinking at all what you thought they were thinking.
That's right. I did a lot of reality testing in small
Hmm.
situations and big situations, and a lot of role playing. I did a lot of role playing with my therapist about re-talking to that 13-year-old boy.
Yeah.
I did a lot of role playing where I basically would talk to that 13-year-old or 11-year-old or 10-year-old Brian and tell him it's okay.
Hmm.
You're okay. It's people can be cruel. That
Yeah.
doesn't, that you can come out of this okay. I would have these conversations either by myself in my room and do a lot of crying. I do a lot of
Yeah.
crying. And with my therapist, just talking to the young Brian and hearing what the young Brian has to say back to me, hearing the fears of that young Brian. And I'm
Yeah.
not crazy. I know that's not really the young Brian talking.
No, I don't think you're crazy. It's, I'm glad. It sounds like you have a great therapist.
Yeah,
And
and there's a lot of that, and it's still ongoing.
yeah.
Do I still have eating disorder thoughts? Yes, I do. If I'm off the beam, if I'm tired, if I'm stressed,
Uh-huh.
I could have a full meal, and if I'm not feeling good about myself, I could have a full meal, and it'll cross my mind.
Uh-huh.
I could just go to the bathroom and get rid of this.
Hmm.
Everything would be okay. It does, but it's quick, and I
Uh-huh.
dismiss it. It's
Uh-huh.
quick, and I dismiss it. And I say that's silly. That is not gonna make things better.
Uh-huh. Exactly. And I think that that insight, having the insight into it, knowing, I could do this, but it's in the long term, it's not going to help. It's
It's
not
not
going
gonna
to
help. So
remedy what's going on.
I still have those thoughts. Do I look in the mirror and still have those thoughts about my stomach and see, the deformed Brian, the body dysmorphic Brian? Sometimes I do. Again,
Yeah.
I process what happens next differently. I immediately go to positive thoughts. That's silly. My clothes
Hmm.
fit fine. I have friends. I have a great girlfriend.
Yep.
They're all supportive. This is just silly. But I
Hmm.
still have tics. I still
Yeah.
have tics from it. And I call them tics in my book. For instance, it is not uncommon for me still that if I'm feeling fat, and feeling fat's okay. We all feel fat, and we all feel
Yes.
ugly sometimes. We look in
Yes.
the mirror and say, "Ah!" That's you know that's normative discontent. We
It
all
is.
we all go through that stuff.
Yes.
But I'll still go through days where I'm feeling fat, and I'll try on every pair of pants in my closet because the feeling of them not being tight causes me relief and allows me to get through the day a little better. That's body dysmorphia. That's obsessive compulsive. The obsessive compulsive part of body dysmorphic disorder speaking.
Yeah, but you're able to fight it. I mean, what I tell my viewers, and something that I use for eating disorders as well as the body dysmorphic, is I call it healthy voice versus the eating disorder voice or the body dysmorphic voice. And it sounds like your healthy self is so strong that even if that BDD comes up and it talks to you, you're so strong that you're like, shut up.
You're right, and I slap it down, and it does still talk to me. I'm not sure. I'm not. You're the treatment provider. I'm just a guy with a story, but I'm not sure there's ever a cure for the thoughts. There's only a cure for how you process them. At least
I have to agree.
I think
Yeah.
I think they get lesser, but it becomes diminishing returns. Okay, where you're fighting off. You're fighting off these just quick things that go through your mind.
Yeah. I call them it's almost like an instinct or like a knee-jerk reaction.
That's right.
We did it for so long that
exactly
it will come up, but like you said, you're able to dismiss them. And that's the power of working on our healthy self.
Part of my recovery has been and I think they call it it's called acceptance therapy now. Part of my recovery has been accepting that some of this stuff is just it's just there. It took 40 years to create this this cement foundation of dysfunction. It may take the rest. It may take the rest of my life to undo it, but every day gets just a little bit better.
And that's the nice thing. You get to enjoy more of your life. Appreciate the people who love you and who are around you.
That's right. Every day I enjoy a little bit more of my life. Every day I take a little more risk and realize no one's talking about me. Yes. Every day becomes a greater joy for me. And and it ultimately culminated in my book. And the path is different from everyone. We're not all people aren't born like me. All people don't respond to fat shaming the same way. All people don't respond to bullying the same way. And when I talk to parents, and we can finish it up with this message. And when I talk to parents, what I tell them is, look, and they ask me, how should I talk to my child? I'm sure you get that.
All the time.
And you have, and you can talk to them from a clinical standpoint. I can just say from my personal experience. Not your child is not you. Okay. Yeah. If your child, let's take bullying. I had a guy say to me, I was raised, my son, I punch him in the nose, and I'm going to teach my son to punch him in the nose, push him, fight back against the bullies. That is how my dad raised me. We were old school. And I'm like, you know what? If your son is psychologically programmed to be that way, that might work.
Yeah.
But what if your son's like me?
Yeah, more meek and mild. Yeah.
What if your son is shy? What if your son just wants to be accepted, or your daughter? You know what's going to happen? They're never going to tell you a thing again.
Exactly.
They're going to bottle it up. They're going to, they'll develop their own coping mechanisms, which may not be healthy.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, we'll take it to extreme. Your child is cutting, engaging in extreme eating behaviors, or maybe they make it out of the house and they're not even living with you anymore. And next thing you know, they're doing drugs. They're depressed, they're suicidal. It could manifest itself in so many different ways, because because you may want to deal with it in a way they're not equipped to handle it.
Yeah, and you're not giving them the options.
That's right. So what do? There are all kinds of treatment options out there that were not available when I was a child. Okay, I tell parents, it is not your fault your child was born a certain way. There is no shame in seeking help. You are not a failure because you seek help.
Yeah.
Parents think they failed. If your child is being bullied and it doesn't want to fight back and is isolating, that's not your fault. You can't treat it like that. The shame is if you don't do anything. If you don't seek help.
And I agree. That's where the shame should lie, is in not reaching out and not speaking.
Reach out. There is no shame in that. Reach out to somebody. If you don't want to go to a treatment provider, reach out. Educate yourself with support groups on the internet. There's all kinds, and just educate yourself. There's all kinds of information out there that I didn't have.
Yeah.
And do just before you speak to your child, learn how to speak to them.
Yeah. And for the children, if you could go back to your 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old self, do you wish that at that point you could have reached out and gotten some kind of support?
I wish I could have. But I don't know. Again, you can't. It's like comparing baseball players of a different era. There was so much. The gender roles were so different back then, and there was so that I don't know that I would have.
Yeah, so, but if people nowadays who are that age, what would be your advice to them? Yeah.
Yeah, my reach out to, there's somebody out there that loves you. Somebody out there wants to help you. Your parents, your friends, there is somebody there that will talk to you if you can release the fear of the shame and just take one step. Just one step, because that one step leads to another.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you so much for taking that time out of your busy day to sit down and share your story with us. And I will put the links for any of my viewers who haven't checked out Brian Cuban's new book. It's Shattered Image, right?
Yes. Can I pitch my book here for a sec?
Of course. Pitch away.
My book is Shattered Image, My Triumph Over Body Dysmorphic Disorder. It recently just reached #1 on in the Amazon eating disorder category, so I was very proud of that. It is available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. It is not available in bookstores yet. You can also go on my website and read a free chapter about my battle with eating disorders.
And it's amazing. I read it. It's really good.
It is www.briancuban.com. You can just read it right there. You can download it, do what you like with it. It is the full free chapter from the book.
Okay, and I will put all of that in the description below, everybody, so you can check out. I'll give the links to the Amazon. It's also on my website in my Amazon widget at the bottom of every page for my recommended readings. And you can go on his website, like you said, and read the chapter so you can get a feel for it. But I'll put the link below so you can all get a copy of it. It's an amazing book, and it's really well written. I loved it. I loved the little part of it. So thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your story. It's so very powerful.
Thank you for having me on. Feel free to ask me back anytime.
Okay, will do. Okay, everyone.
Thank you.
I will see you tomorrow, my viewers, and thank you, Brian.
Take care. Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.